Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas, Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman, and it is the Homestead Weekend Review episode, the best mile and a half by far, and that was evident, and that was proven.
Not even close.
Once again this past weekend with a thrilling Xfinity Series race along with a very entertaining Cup Series race. So we've got those two races to recap and break down for you guys today. So that's just going to be the episode today. We're going to leave the news and notes and everything that's happened over the past couple of days for later on this week. So make sure you come back for that. We'll review all that. We've got some F1 liveries that are coming out today when you are watching this. So we've got Mercedes and Alpine F1 team, their newly rebranded schemes coming out. So going to be a fun one to dissect there. Yeah, Mercedes is basically released theirs already, but Alpine's is going to be one to keep your eye on for sure. But before we get into the race recaps, how are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing good. Yes, both of our hockey teams did very well over the past couple days, especially as we're recording this. A couple of shutouts, so not too shabby in that regard. But no, doing good. A fantastic weekend of racing. We had a couple different organizations get their seasons underway in Formula E and supercars down in Australia. Yep. Had some exciting races there, but the big thing, Homestead for NASCAR, and I think both races, even though Xfinity had its own crazy finish, but even though the Cup Series didn't have a crazy finish, still a very, very strong race nonetheless. Homestead remains the best mile and a half in NASCAR. It isn't even close, so very excited to break down these couple races today.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. We got to bump that thing up next time we do the track tier list. Yeah. It's just too good. It's too good. And hopefully in 2022, we will have two races. If it's not the championship finale again, we need Homestead to at least have two races if it's not going to be the special event to end the season and crown a champion. But we're living in the past.
Something. It needs to be more special than just a third race of the season.
Yeah, it's just placed there. It's such a weird spot. I don't like it, but I'll take Homestead anytime we can get it, and we definitely got some great racing this past weekend. And for our fantasy lineups, it was not off to a great start before the green flag even started. No pun intended there with the show name. But Denny Hamlin would go to the rear of the field for unapproved adjustments. Well, that was not great for our fantasy lineups, to say the least, when we were banking on him starting on pole. Yep. Oh, Kyle, what happened in fantasy this past weekend?
We're getting pretty. I
kind of forgot.
A 1-point win based off of somebody blowing a tire, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it all the way to the bank. The WAC is back, ladies and gentlemen. The WAC is back, and feeling good after this past weekend. Had it covered the entire time. Knew it was going to happen. The jinx worked once again with the text messages.
You are the worst luck in the world. Like, it's kind of scary.
If I can just do that to every single person that I don't have in my lineup that you do, I'm golden for the rest of the year, it seems. So
I just need to match you on everybody then.
It is nuts how bad my luck is when as soon as I bring somebody
this weekend. There was a couple comments you made this weekend, which I'm sure will come up as we talk about things, but you were like a scary jinx this weekend.
Yeah, it was. But we can get into the race winner right at the gate here. We don't have to wait too long. But to point out the Denny Hamlin thing with fantasy, I felt like that was appropriate. But the race winner for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Homestead-Miami Speedway was none other than William Byron. William Byron collects his second career Cup Series victory at Homestead-Miami Speedway by quite some margin over the second-place car in Tyler Reddick, who was just ripping the wall at the end. So fun to watch. He was over a second faster than everybody in the field at that time, basically, that was on his that current set of tires, the same tire strategy there. So William Byron, Kyle, what a race, what a performance, dominating 102 laps led, won a stage, was kind of like the underlying guy throughout the entire race. Even when he was out front, he wasn't getting talked about enough, I thought, because he was just on cruise control, it seemed. He just got out to a nice, healthy lead, managed the gap, managed his tires, didn't run the wall. Basically, the entire night was that a groove lower up in the high lane, but he managed the race to perfection. And as well, Rudy Fugle gets his first career Cup Series victory, only his third race with William Byron. Obviously, the big move over the offseason, Rudy Fugle going from KBM in the Truck Series up to Hendrick Motorsports in the Cup Series because of that previous relationship and the previous success they had together at KBM when William Byron was down there in the Truck Series. They won at Homestead together in their one and only season, so that success has translated to success in the Cup Series here for William Byron. So congratulations to the 24 team. I'm growing on that paint scheme as well. I got to be honest. It looks pretty good. I was skeptical when it first got released, but that thing looked damn good out front. And what a race by William Byron, Kyle.
Yeah, and a bit of a surprising one. I don't think many people really had William Byron pegged as a guy to kind of contend for the win here. We knew that Hendrick would probably be strong, just given some of the names in their stable there, specifically looking at Chase Elliott, who finished second last year at this track, and Kyle Larson, who was regarded as one of the best at riding the outside wall and being good here at Homestead. But William Byron kind of sneaky good at this track when you look at his previous results in trucks, in Xfinity, of course, winning the championship in Xfinity, winning the race with Rudy Fugle in trucks. But in Cup, it hasn't really come to much so far. Last year, he had the 9th place finish, finishing inside the top 10, but overall, just an absolutely standout performance from that entire 24 team, going out, not only just winning the race, but getting 57 points as well, getting a big stage points haul, getting an extra playoff point there for the stage win as well. And that's the kind of performance that kind of opens some eyes. We've been waiting for William Byron to kind of have that breakout season. A couple of years ago, it looked like he was trending towards that after making the round of 8. Last year, things started to stagnate. This year, starting with Rudy Fugle and starting off with a win like this, that's got to be huge for their confidence as a team, huge for them going forward, not having to worry about the playoffs whatsoever. They're locked in already through just 3 races. They can focus on all the development, everything that they want without having to worry about the playoff bubble like they haven't been able to do in years past. So a huge win for William Byron here, a fantastic one to really solidify that team, kind of prove themselves right in terms of William Byron sticking around at that team despite some lackluster results over the last couple of years at times. For Hendrick Motorsports, going with Rudy Fugle, betting on the guy who's been good with him in the past in the Truck Series, moving him all the way up to the Cup Series, and pays off well. 3rd race in, getting that first win of the season. I had him as my bounce back driver for the year. I said that he'd go out and get a couple wins in the regular season, and they're trending really well here, not only just here at Homestead. They had some speed at the road course as well, but to have this kind of performance at 1.5 miles, one that is very much a driver's track as well, as we can see with some of the names inside the top 10 and in the mix throughout the day. Very, very impressive performance from that 24 team here at Homestead.
Yeah, eye-opening for sure. Definitely leaves a lot of questions over there with Hendrick, like how well can they do this season on a positive side of things? It's could be something
Hendrick
special over there at Hendrick.
Fast.
Like,
they were
really
very good. And I don't know if that's a Homestead thing. I don't know if that's potentially season long, but even at the end of last season as well, obviously Chase Elliott going out and winning the championship, but Alex Bowman was right there in the hunt to make the championship 4 as well, with a very, very strong championship or playoff long run. Jimmy Johnson, don't forget, was up there as one of the best non-championship 4 drivers at Phoenix as well.
Yeah.
And William Byron had some sneaky speed at the end of last year too. So Hendrick bringing that over into 2021 with some strong results to start the season. And if they can get that whole stable going, and it's not just the Chase Elliott show or anything like that, watch out for them for sure the rest of the season.
Yeah, and through the first 3 races of the season, all 3 manufacturers have won a race now, so that's good for diversifying the grid.
Definitely
to say the least.
3 that we thought would win for each manufacturer.
100%. Everybody had Michael McDowell, Christopher Bell, and William Byron as the first 3 race winners of the season. I mean, it's just incredible what this season is right now. I have no idea what's going on. It's flipped upside down. We thought 2020 was kind of nuts and how it all broke down, but this could be Fox's promo slogan of the best season ever, however you want to look at things. And with this victory, Hendrick Motorsports, I believe, is now 4 wins behind the all-time record in the Cup Series, as well behind Richard Petty Motorsports. So I think they mentioned that on the broadcast. So they could definitely break that this season with the way things are going.
Oh, yeah.
Just based off of Chase Elliott's road course prowess alone. But William Byron, if he can win some multiple races this season, let's not forget, I mean, his first career victory came last season at Daytona in the regular season finale to punch his ticket into the playoffs, and he was right on that bubble going into that race. Like, the pressure on that kid was crazy going into that one, and he prevailed. He somehow won his first career race at Daytona, and he's liking the state of Florida, to say the least. He's got now one in Homestead-Miami Speedway as well. So really great story there for William Byron. Congratulations to that whole 24 team. Jeff Gordon was very happy, to say the least, to see that quote-unquote Rainbow Warrior paint scheme back out front. And
it's like a modern Rainbow Warrior. Like the paint scheme was solid to begin with. We just kind of knew what it could be. But yeah, it's grown on me as well. It's very different, but it weirdly kind of works.
Yeah, I know. It's just that black base that maybe it's just like that we talked about when it first got released. I'm like a little against it, but the colors, the actual like the red, the yellow, the green, the blue.
You can't go wrong with the rainbow colors. Like it's so good.
Yeah, you can't. It's just so beautiful. Yeah. But I don't know. William Byron, man. I just cannot get my head around that Christopher Bell, William Byron, two of Kyle Busch's proteges, and Michael McDowell are your race winners this season. Like, what the heck's going to happen in Vegas? Everybody gets lucky in Vegas, but I mean, like, what is going on with this season? I have no clue what is happening, but some of the big contenders are kind of struggling, off to a slower start this season than what we expected. Penske really struggled in this race in the latter half of it. Looked pretty solid early on.
Strange race for Penske, yeah.
I don't know what the heck's going on with it was just so flipped upside down from the beginning of the race. I know they had the day to night transition, but I mean, it just like flipped like a switch for a lot of these guys. Some guys that were struggling early on, they kind of found their speed later on in the race, namely Tyler Reddick. But I mean, that was just a long run and him being able to rim ride the wall like nobody's business. I mean, we got to talk about Tyler Reddick, Kyle, because this guy goes in the Xfinity race the day prior, absolutely steals the show there as well, finishing second. We'll get to that a little bit later on, but unfortunately for him, that would not be the case once post-race inspection was completed. But Tyler Reddick finishing second, we'll call it, for both races this weekend, and he went from at least 10 plus seconds back on that last run with it. We're out 40 laps to go. More. And maybe more. Was it 11, 12 seconds?
I think at one point it was like 12, 13 seconds.
And he got up to 3.5 by the end of the race.
And just charging. And
if that race goes green for 10 laps more, he wins that race. 100%. Like
probably. Yeah. Like, or at least he gets there. So
yeah, at least he gets there.
No, that was insane to see, because for the first like 3/4 of the race, they were a complete non-factor. Like they were in the 20s. Like we were discussing potentially garaging him, even though he's not somebody that we're looking at potentially like using up usages for or saving him for the rest of the season. He was just that much. Like we didn't know if they just completely missed on the setup or something, but it really just was. They had it set up to run up right up against the wall, which is obviously what you would do for a Tyler Reddick car at Homestead. And the line didn't come in until like that last little bit of the race, which was kind of opposite from what people might have thought with starting in the day and then the transitioning to night and there being more grip at night, where one of the lower lanes might work. But nope, it was the last little bit of the race right up against the wall. He was the only one that was doing it. And I think he might have been like the only one that had a car set up to do it as well, because we saw even with Larson, who we know to do it all the time in the past.
He never got really up there.
He never really went up there. When he did, his car looked loose. He didn't look comfortable up there. Truex as well. He went up there a couple times and was significantly slower than Reddick as well. The race just kind of finally went into Reddick's hands and the number 8 car's hands, and they just took off. Like there was nobody even close to them in terms of speed on that tire strategy, of course, on that last run. And it made for quite the last couple of laps there, because you just see it ticking down. And we knew he wouldn't get all the way up to Byron, because Byron had second and third gapped by like 4 or 5 seconds by the point like Reddick would have caught them. But that little battle for second, third, and fourth there at the end was pretty fun too. But no, Reddick was just incredible the entire weekend with the Our Motorsports made car, but running technically with the RSS 23 was phenomenal at the end of that race. Doing what he did against those guys in mid-pack equipment is fantastic to see. And then going out and finishing second as well in the Cup Series race, it's only a matter of time before he wins here.
Yeah, I'm shocked that he honestly hasn't so far in the Cup Series, just based off of his 2 starts. He's finished 4th and 2nd, and like if he keeps that trajectory up, he's going to win the race here next year. Like
it would be very satisfying to see him go from 4 to 2 to 1, just have it each time. But Tyler Reddick, man, he's just otherworldly at riding the rim, and showed once again here in this one, picking up that second place finish.
Yeah, he did say coming into the weekend he may play it a bit cautious just based off of where he started, and you wonder if that was the case early on, because he was really, really struggling from an eye test, because it was back in 20.
Well, no, he was struggling. Like he was down in the 20s for the entire race until that final stage.
Yeah, I don't know what they did for adjustments, or if the car just really came to him on that last run, or if he's just like, screw it, let's just go for it, put the hammer down. And if he did, I mean, that hammer works pretty well. I got to be honest. I mean, that was one heck of a show. I mean, you wonder if that was for the race for the lead. Not to put anything against William Byron, but I mean, like if Reddick's charging on the 2 leaders and Larson and Truex at the end, like what a finish that would have been. But yeah, great battle there at the end as well there for second, like you mentioned. Truex and Larson were kind of right in there, the top 5. Basically the entire day had top 5 speed. The front 3 there were with Byron, Truex, and Reddick, in Larson. They didn't really mess up. They were just kind of consistently there the entire day, got the stage points, hence them being the first 3 point scorers, the biggest point scorers from this race. So, I mean, what a great performance by all 3 of those guys running the wall. It's kind of become their thing. It's specifically Truex and Larson. They've been doing that pretty well and pretty consistently at Homestead for quite a while, but there were a couple incidents throughout the race, and, Eric Almirola to name one with Ryan Blaney. That was an interesting one, to say the least, there in that final stage. Not too great for my fantasy lineup, I got to say, because
you still got the win anyways. But
I know, but I did put Ryan Blaney in my lineup, and I kept him in my lineup. I didn't put him in the garage because he earned stage 2 points. I'm like, okay, the 12 car is starting to move in the right direction. The nighttime is the right time. And it was not the right time for Ryan Blaney, unfortunately, as Eric Almirola acted like the 12 car wasn't there. And just slid up right next to him and slid up right in front of him there off of turn 2. And Blaney and Almirola's cars wouldn't be necessarily done for the day, but they were really off the pace there at the final couple of laps, finishing laps down were the 2 of them. So unfortunate for my fantasy lineup. I was like, oh, I'm done. I'm done. I can't.
You thought you were done even
it.
after the race was done.
Yeah. I didn't even bother texting him like how bad was it, because I really thought, but then I saw Custer's name start to really go down the running order. I'm like, do I have a shot here? Like, but when I realized that Harvick was the top Ford finisher, I'm like, nah, there's no way it could have been that bad. Like, I know Custer's would have been, that's a lot of steps, a lot of positions to follow, but 1 point was the margin of victory. We couldn't be closer between the 2 of us after the first couple of weeks, really. Like 5 points.
5
overall.
points between us, yeah. It's nuts, but
that's absolutely insane. But that caution there really set up the finish there. That 67 lap run to the green to the finish there with the tire strategy. The Penske cars we can mention here.
Was it? Yeah. Before we get to that, how awesome was it just getting a long green flag run to end the race after
years? I feel like
it feels like years, the way that the first couple races went in terms of the chaos at the end, but just so much fun at this track with the tire wear and the comers and goers.
It's perfect.
It is the perfect mile and a half, and just the entire race. We didn't need a crazy finish.
No.
And it was still a fantastic race. Like that's a mile and a half at its finest.
That's
obviously you want like that battle for second to be the battle for the win, and then it's like a perfect race.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at a mile and a half, for it to be just kind of like a relatively normal race, nothing like extreme happens throughout the entire thing. You had people in conversation at the beginning of the race that weren't at the end. You had people come on late. You had hard chargers at the end. You had people try different strategies. You had tire wear involved, and all of it just kind of culminated in a really, really fun race that didn't need to be kind of over the top with cautions or crazy finishes or anything like that. And it just feels like it's been a long time since we've had just kind of a normal
shenanigans
race with, exactly. No shenanigans involved. And it was just really refreshing and was just a really fun race.
Yeah, I didn't need anything there at the end. I was totally content with what was happening.
To stay green. Yeah,
I especially at Homestead. I think honestly the restarts at Homestead kind of ruin it. I would rather see them run green, just based off of how the tire fall off is, and you have a lot of guys who save the tires or who can run the wall. Specifically Reddick there, they emerge as their true talent. Like that's an entire fuel window. That's as much as they can really go on one tank of gas. Like it was just outlined perfectly for it to go green to the end, and I didn't need anything more than that to have a successful race.
Yeah, I'll say like an overtime at Homestead, it just isn't it, but like a 10 lap, 15 lap shootout.
Okay,
that's where that's
what I mean. A late caution, like 5 to go. So, I'm like, no, I don't want that.
Like what we saw in Xfinity, like where you get the overtime versus everything that was going on beforehand. Yeah, I completely agree there.
Yeah. Penske, let's talk about them because
What the
I don't know
hell?
what the heck happened. Because in the early parts of the race, they seemed to be maybe one of the teams to beat. Keselowski leading laps was up there at the front. We'll talk about Chris Buescher in a little bit because he definitely deserves it. But Joey Logano, I don't know what the heck happened to that 22 car. And Ryan Blaney was by far the furthest off of the three Penske cars this entire race because I don't know what the heck happened. I started mid-pack a little bit. I don't know if that hindered or helped
Even
the car at
Benedetto,
all.
who started way at the back, was up in the top
Terrible.
15 after like 10, 15 laps, and then the entire stable just fell off after that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's traditional that the Penske cars have a good short run car and they fall off on the long run. It's just been the history of Penske for, I would say, specifically this generation of car. I don't know what the heck happened because Blaney was struggling the entire race. When you look at the success that they had last year, it just begs the question, what's going on over there with the 12 car? A rough start to their season overall. Daytona, you can't really look at anything there, but the road course specifically struggling there when you expect them to do well, especially after what we saw in the Busch Clash. And then here, had a good run last year. I thought he could translate it this year, hence putting him in my lineup. And that was not the case. If you put any of the Penske cars in your lineup, you were left with a wasted usage to an extent because Keselowski Logano pulled off a weird strategy there late in stage 3
What
because
was that?
they tried to split the stage and they hoped that the field would follow them down. Keselowski was running in a top 10 position when he was pitting, and then
both of
Logano
them
was.
were, I think.
No, Logano was way back. He was like back in like the mid-teens to 20s at that point. But yeah, I don't know what the heck happened there.
Like,
it was just a weird strategy call. I can understand that they would think some guys would follow them down more so than what people did.
The strange part about it all was that Kurt Busch accidentally had to go on that strategy because of
10 laps prior.
The vibration, but 10 laps prior, and he was able to get all the way back up to 8th. So for them who weren't planning to go with like a different strategy and were forced into it, were able to recoup a top 10 position. But Penske, who tried to split the stage, they just completely screwed up. Like they barely got back on the lead lap, let alone contending for a top 10. So I don't know if it was something where they needed to go and pit earlier, like with Kurt Busch in their situation, and they just needed more time on newer tires. I don't know if it was just the car late in the game where Kurt Busch looked like he was going to get up there and contend for a top 3, potentially the win.
That one car.
They have to go down and pit, and they come back around and get up to the top 10. But just very strange to see only 2 cars try that different strategy, and for it to basically be miserable for them, completely fail in terms of net gain, in terms of points. Basically, there was no chance of it working out because even if you get a late race caution, while you being on newer tires, you're not going to stay out because you're going to get eaten alive. So it was just a very, very strange strategy call. I really don't know what they were thinking there. And it ultimately cost them at least a decent finishing position, specifically for Keselowski, who was in the top 10. I apologize. I completely forgot where Logano was at that point. But yeah, like even then, like did Logano even get back to the lead lap? Like, did he barely just do so? Like,
might have been at the end.
If he was, he's got to be one of the last ones on the lead lap. So
yeah, I can pull that up right now.
Sure. I really don't know what the thought process was there.
He finishes the last car on the lead lap in 25th.
Exactly. There you go. So barely getting back on the lead lap.
It's a net loss at the end of the day when he
pitted.
Net
loss. It's crazy.
Yeah, but we've seen in the past at Homestead where they go green for the entire, like about whatever the last stage length is, 110 laps or something like that, right? So then they split it in either to 2 sections or to 1. They split it in half, or they try and put it into thirds. And this was not the case because it's only a 67 lap run to the end, and you can make it on 1 tank of gas. So that kind of negates the possibility of anybody really going onto that next set of tires, unless you got like 6 of the top 10 going onto fresh tires there within 2-3 laps. Then you would bring everybody basically down, including the leaders. But with only the 2 Penske cars that were falling back anyways, you're not going to get near, if any, as we saw, cars to come fall you down.
Strong enough cars at that point of the race either to be able to go out and make up for it. So I guess I understand trying to go out and try to do something and see if like things can fall your way. But for Penske there, just kind of threw away a couple of, at least one decent finish and better finishes than what they ended up with. So I don't know if it was just kind of like trying to see if an alternate strategy would work out or something like that, just test something out because they weren't going to be up there for the win, just doing what the leaders were doing. But yeah, completely backfired on them here.
For sure. Let's stay in the Ford camp with this next one. Chris Buescher. He definitely deserves a mention in this one. It fell off at the end of the race, no doubt. But in the first half of this race, that was the car to beat. The 17 car for Roush Fenway Racing leading at a 1.5 mile track. I mean, there was a statistic that came out. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but it's been a long, long time since we've seen them.
I think I liked it. I'll see if I can find it real quick. But it was,
threw me back to Matt Kenseth days when that 17 car was leading at Homestead. And my, oh my, Chris Buescher wins a stage in this one, getting solid stage points in the second one
like
as
not
well.
Even strategy or anything, just straight up on speed.
He literally passed the 2 car in that first stage to go on and win the first stage. Like, that is incredible. That has to feel so good for Roush Fenway Racing. The finish wasn't quite where they wanted it, of course, but the second car there with Ryan Newman picked up the slack to an extent in terms of the overall finish, getting a top 10. I mean, that's incredible for that team. So congratulations to Chris Buescher and Ryan Newman on just a successful weekend for Roush. They really need that for that program. I would love to see Roush back to somewhat of its old form back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, because they were almost the team to beat. They were right there with the Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing. It was just a lot of fun back then when they had that 4-car stable, and we know how it's all kind of transcended downhill since. So it's just been a great weekend there for that entire team. Really happy
just
for Chris Buescher.
Validate some of the changes they made over the offseason, right? And yeah, exactly. And just kind of
good old
showing
Jimmy Fenning, that guy.
He's just showing that some of the stuff that they're trying is actually working in terms of resulting in on-track speed. We saw last year they took a significant step back, even with Chris Buescher stepping into that program, who I think both of us agree is an upgrade on Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Yes. 100%.
Ryan Newman the previous year was super consistent, made the playoffs on points. Yeah. Neither of those cars were even close to making the playoffs on points or anything like that. And I found the tweet here. So last win for Roush Fenway Racing, any win, July 2017 Daytona, Ricky Stenhouse. Last win at a non-plate track, June 2014 Sonoma, Carl Edwards. Last win, non-plate or road course, March 2014 at Bristol, Carl Edwards.
That's the race I went to.
Non-plate, road course, or short track, June 2013. Michigan, Greg Biffle. Their last win on a 1.5 miles was Kansas, Matt Kenseth, October 2012. We're talking 8.5 years essentially since their last win at a 1.5 miles, and to see that kind of speed from that team up there early was fantastic to see. Hugely promising for them going the rest of the season. Obviously, they didn't get the finish they wanted to get back in traffic after a bad restart, and they just weren't able to come back through the field. But to see the 17 up there leading and winning a stage on raw pace, so much fun to see.
Yeah, that's just incredible to actually hear. That just blows my mind after how much Roush was so good for the early parts of watching NASCAR for myself. It's just, it's so disappointing to see how that team has fallen downhill. It's just
one time five car team dominating the chase,
powerhouse,
taking up half the grid, and now 2 cars and both of them nowhere close to the playoffs last year, even with an inflated 16-car playoff format. And just, exactly. And it wasn't just Buescher as well. Ryan Newman was up in the top 10 at the same time as well. So a big shout out to Roush Fenway for making some changes over the offseason, as they said on the broadcast, making some hard decisions there as well, and paying off at least early on in this race. Didn't get the finishes they wanted, but again, very promising going into the rest of this schedule.
The Fords just had an up and down weekend, and I think this is definitely an up. The Daytona 500 winner, Kyle, Michael McDowell.
They just had so many weird contenders in this race.
3 top 10s to start the season with Kevin Harvick. Those are the 2 guys to start the season with 2 top 10s. Nobody else in the entire 40-car field has 3 top 10s to start the season. That is mind-blowing. He is 4th in points, ladies and gentlemen. Hold the phone. Is Michael McDowell a championship contender? I won't go that far, but he is definitely deserving of a playoff spot right now. That Daytona 500 win, if he can continue somewhat to this degree of success this season, who we thought last year was his best season on record. Watch out, because this 34
It's not even close.
is about to break it in just the first 10 races of the season, the way he's going. So mile and a half speed on a worn out track like this. No, we've never seen the 34 car come remotely this close to that kind of speed. No. And the fact that it held up on the long run like that, props to Jude Blickensterfer, man. Maybe he's back, because he used to be a powerhouse as well. But Michael McDowell deserves a heck of a lot of credit too. Persevered last week after a terrible start where he had the flat tire at the road course, got back to a top 10 finish. And this time he had legit speed, was in the top 10. He had a top 10 starting position, and he was basically there the entire day. I would love to know his average running position, because I definitely think it's a top 10 spot, but really great run for Michael McDowell, Chris Buescher, Ryan Newman, all the names that you would definitely expect to run well at Homestead. I don't know what the heck's happening with this season, but your thoughts on Michael McDowell's strong performance at Homestead?
It's just awesome to see, isn't it? Like, it's just so awesome to see a smaller team with a driver that's worked relentlessly hard to get to this point in his career, to be rewarded with some kind of success early on in the season. Last year, they had 4 top 10s. That was their best season on date. They've got 3 out of 3 so far this season. Like, it's ridiculous.
If he does it at Vegas, that's nuts. Because
oh my God.
If he gets it at Vegas, that's even more impressive in my opinion. Because Vegas, the top guys always come out there. There's not really any surprises.
Just remarkable from Michael McDowell here. And for the fact that it's him and Kevin Harvick as the guys to have top 10 so far this season, like, it's just awesome to see. And I'm so glad that it wasn't just the 500 and then they wreck out or something at the road course, and then they finish like 25th or something, and they have such a high point to start the year, and then they just kind of stumble out of the gate essentially after the 500. To see them continue the success after the 500 is so awesome to see, building on what was a great program last year, a big uptick in performance last year. Continue that. We know some of the parts freezes and all that kind of stuff, which are leading to a lot more of the parity that we've seen so far this season. But for Front Row to be getting these kind of results this season is nothing short of spectacular.
I would have never expected either of these two to have the top 10s after the first 3 races. Harvick on a road course? Are you kidding me? Like, what's going on? And on a super speedway.
Looking at McDowell's history at Homestead, he had one other top 10 there back in 2016, finishing 10th for Levine Family Racing. Outside of that, looking at the last few years, 15th in 2020, 26th in 2019, 28th in 2018, 24th in 2017. Like, this team is completely different from just 2 years ago, even from last year at some points. Just seeing everything that they've been able to do, the consistency that they've been able to find. It was going to be a challenge for them to go out and finish similarly in points to where they did last year, just with some of the new teams that we've seen come into play, some of the different driver moves and stuff like that, with some mid-pack teams getting more competitive. But Front Row Motorsports, as surprising as it is, they're right there with the rest of them. And by the end of the season, obviously with the win and everything on points for NASCAR, there'll be a top 16 team, assuming that we don't get 16 race winners, which at this point, who the hell knows, we might. On season-long points, there's still a legit shot to finish top 22, top 23, which is something that, just looking a couple years ago, even when the mid-pack was so much thinner than what it is right now, wasn't even a thought for this team. So Michael McDowell, there are a few people that deserve it as much as him in motorsports as a whole. For him to hold the record for most last place finishes in NASCAR, spending a couple of years there starting parking for teams after that kind of failed season with Michael Waltrip Racing, being rushed from ARCA all the way up to Cup, to see him have this kind of success here at kind of like the later middle of his career is so awesome to see.
You wonder if he can keep up this pace for, the entire season, to an extent, of course, speaking realistically here. You wonder if he can jump ship eventually here, or try and maybe go to a bigger team. We've seen it with Bubba Wallace on how he had his best season on record last year, and look where he is now at a high-profile team that's building a new shop there.
Let's assume Ryan Newman. Yeah, let's assume Ryan Newman does retire, like we expect that he will at the end of the season. Yeah. Could McDowell be somebody that that goes over to Roush or something like that? Like, is he somebody that could go out and get like a Chip Ganassi ride if Kurt Busch retires? Like, what situations could he find himself in? There's not going to be a lot of veterans on the market as well. If he's performing like this, obviously not top 10s every single race, but if he's consistently outperforming his equipment again, does he end up getting an upgrade in equipment? Does he stay with Front Row Motorsports and continue to build there? Definitely a story to watch the rest of the season, and one of the big stories out of these first couple of races here.
100%. Let's talk about Toyota, Kyle. We haven't mentioned them much in this episode so far. Kind of a tale of two coins, really. Martin Truex Jr. really leading that stable, and other than that, pretty quiet night for Joe Gibbs Racing, as we both predicted them to be the favorites coming into this. So I wouldn't have been surprised if it was 1, 2, 3, 4, based off of the previous success that we've seen. When you look
at the drivers involved, you would have thought, but it was really only Truex that was in the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin starting at the rear, obviously, but never really, it's a long time to get your track position made up. And the 11 car was just kind of stagnant the entire race, finishing second, I think it was, there to end stage 2 off of that aggressive move on his teammate there in Martin Truex Jr. off of turn 4. And then that's about as close as Hamlin ever got to the front. And this is a track he's historically been superb on, and it's just another
then just completely killed the finish with the penalty as well. Speeding on pit road, put them at the back. And even though you can pass at this track, from what we saw from that car throughout this race, it took a long time to get up there to the front. And as we saw in that final stage, it was a long green flag run, and even with that, they were barely able to get inside the top 15 for a decent finish.
Yeah, and Christopher Bell coming off of the win, you expected a little bit more from him.
8th place last year with Levine Family Racing, and finishing barely staying on the lead lap at points during this race. Just completely missed on that one.
You think, the lack of practice probably has something to do with this, of course, but it also is the first mile and a half of the season, and that can usually, throw everything up in the air to an extent, because Homestead wasn't the first mile and a half last season, so it was a little bit more predictable in terms of which drivers looked good in the first little bit of the season there at Vegas, namely, and stuff like that. They had a whole bunch of time there during the pandemic break to try and figure out their mile and a half setup after what they had from previous notes, and this time they didn't have that luxury, so definitely goes to show you that practice does mean a lot for some of these teams. If the big names definitely struggled as the longevity went on, that was a huge word I heard over the radio across everybody, that they just didn't have the longevity in their cars to contend. And the cars that did, we saw them rise to the front, and Joe Gibbs Racing was not one of those teams apart from Martin Truex Jr. So definitely wish I played Martin Truex Jr. instead of Denny Hamlin this past weekend, despite having a usage on him in the road course. But you can only look back. It's devil's advocate at the end of the day. So I don't know. It's just a weird start to the season, a fun start to the season. I don't know what the heck's going to happen in store from here, but Vegas should be fun.
Oh yeah. Just a fantastic start to the season. And obviously the 500 itself was disappointing in terms of the actual racing of it. But when you're looking at the storylines, when you're looking at the finishes, when you're looking at the results from everything, what a fun start this season in terms of just wild card winners, lots of parity. And we expect that through the first 3 races. When you look at the tracks as well, when you look at Daytona, the Tri-Oval, anyone can win there. Obviously, we know the road course, we expect some different players in that one, but for Homestead, we do expect to see kind of the big dogs show up there. But if there is a mile and a half where some other contenders can get in there, it's at the old worn out places, such as a Homestead. So you would maybe expect a little bit of difference. I think we're really going to see whether it is a very, very mixed up grid coming into this next race at Vegas, where it's much more that normal one groove kind of mile and a half. There's not as many
top teams really excel.
The top teams really excel there. The top teams dominates, kind of the same names up at the front. Last year, we saw a couple crazy results there with a late race restart and then the whole pit shenanigans with the caution going at the worst time there in the playoff race. So there is some possibility that we get a mixed up grid, but assuming it goes green, we would expect to see some of the big contenders kind of take back over this weekend. But if the parity that's been shown so far continues, then maybe we do see a mixed up grid once again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm putting money that it's going to be a 4th different winner. If one of those 3 guys win again here, Oh boy, what a season we've got in store if one of those guys end up with 2 wins out of 4 races. But I think it's time to take a look at the notable finishes here, Kyle. I don't really have anything else in terms of the race to get into, but I mean, your winner, obviously, William Byron's a pretty good
Fairly
one.
notable.
But Tyler Reddick in second. We've talked about him plenty so far. Martin Truex Jr. there in third. Kyle Larson in fourth.
Yeah,
Props to him.
Just before we jump ahead, Truex, good to see them return to form here at Homestead last year. Finished outside the top 10 with James Small there atop the pit box. One of his first, if not his, no, it would have been his first mile and a half then.
Vegas,
last season. Was Vegas before Homestead? Right, because Homestead jumped up in the schedule, but would have been one of his first mile and a halves last season. So good to see them return to form there. Maybe bodes well for them the rest of the season at mile and a halves.
I'm expecting big things from Martin Truex Jr. this season. I think he's going to be going on quite the tear over there.
Underrated bounce back kind of guy when you look at just the 1 win last season versus years past.
I did say it. I go back to our season preview. He was my second guy for the bounce back driver of the year. Yep. He's definitely the one that I'm looking at the most right now.
But my guy won this race, so
okay, fair enough.
Hey,
who won fantasy?
You can't be that mad. Yeah,
that's right. Exactly. Kyle Larson in fourth. Really great run from him. Consistent the entire day. Didn't ride the wall as much as we expected him to, but nonetheless, a top 5 finish off to a very strong start to this season.
In the top 5 is the most important thing for me.
Yeah, and had a disappointing result there to end his road course at Daytona, but hopefully this is a sign of things to come with Kyle Larson. Really impressing me so far with this package. I think if it was the 750 package, he would have probably won this race just based off of how much the throttle and off throttle time really come into play there. We probably
would have seen more wall riding as well. So
yeah, but this car just doesn't really lend itself with this package to rip the wall like that. I mean, does it come down to the debate? Do you think Tyler Reddick is better running the wall than Kyle Larson? I mean, this was the best case. This is the perfect time to really look at it because, I mean, Reddick did drive the wall, but Larson in the past has been that guy. But I would love to hear your take because I have my opinion, but who do you think is better at running the wall?
I'll give the edge to Reddick right now because we've seen him do it in the Xfinity cars and do it in the Cup cars right now and do it with extreme success. Kyle Larson, for all the talk of him being fantastic at Homestead and everything like that, he's only got like a couple of those really high-end finishes, but then you think about the Championship 4 being involved. I want to see the higher horsepower and with him back in it and see them go to head-to-head, but I think right now I might give the edge to Reddick. Is that controversial to say? I don't know.
I'm giving it to Reddick as well. Just based off of Larson when he was in the Xfinity cars on a consistent basis when he ran the 42 and even in the Cup Series when he was in contention for the win, he always would choke it at the end on these kind of tracks where you have to run the wall, you get into it late, he'd get a flat tire, have to pit. We haven't really seen that with Reddick in terms of that ability to throw a win away like that. He's been very consistent getting the results at the end of things. I mean, just look at the 23 car on the Xfinity Series race this past weekend. Like, I don't know if Larson would have done that. Like, I think Larson would have maybe been top 5, but being right there at the end, almost winning the damn race, I don't know if Larson's quite there yet.
That's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up.
I'll give it to Reddick because I think this is the only track you can really ask that question on the entire season. Who's better at running the wall?
A little bit, but not the same.
But we saw who runs the wall there. Well, last year, Harvick and Logano. You're telling me those guys are good at running the wall? No, it's just the package, right? So this track is where the off throttle time really comes into play. It's the massaging of the throttle. I'll just give it to Reddick on this one. So I thought that was a good over-under kind of question. But, give it to Reddick here. Let us know in the comment section down below. What do you think? Do you think Reddick is better at running the wall or is Kyle Larson better at running the wall? It's a good discussion to have. And then to round out the top 5, Kevin Harvick, a guy who I had in my fantasy lineup, gets the top forward finishing position as well. So you get the bonus pick on that one. But darn, he didn't quite get it.
If only it was worth 6 points.
If only. But we don't celebrate draws, we celebrate wins. And that was definitely what I had this past weekend by a mere 1 point. But Kevin Harvick had a up and down day, to say the least. Kind of showed glimpses of success a little bit early on, then fell all the way back to the late teens in that second stage.
Wasn't the high end that we maybe thought from them as well, with a track that they performed very well at in the past as well. Last year, they just kind of missed the mark entirely, went for kind of a short run car. Didn't really play out last year that way. came in with a different mindset this year, and they were good, but not Kevin Harvick good, right?
No.
They were solid top 4 finisher. They finished top 5, but kind of quiet but solid day for Kevin Harvick here.
Yeah, behind them, Michael McDowell finishing 6th. Are you kidding me?
Almost, and he was running down Harvick too. Like,
are you kidding me right now? Michael McDowell with the 6th place finish. What is going on? And then Ryan Newman in 7th. Like, what is this top 10 really?
Yeah.
Like, this is not 9th and 10th place. This is 6th and 7th we're talking about here. This is firmly inside the top 10. Credit to those guys on a spectacular weekend, spectacular finish. Hopefully that goes a long way for specifically Newman because he's not locked into the playoffs. Hopefully this is a sign of things to come with Ryan Newman. I would love to see, if this is his swan song season, I would love to see him kind of go out on good terms like this. So only these good kind of finishes can help him put him at ease if that decision does come later on this season. And a guy who could also be potentially retiring right behind him there, Kurt Busch, with a great recovery drive from a lap down there with about 40 laps to go for an unscheduled pit stop for a loose left front tires, got up all the way to 8th, had fresh tires at the end, fresher tires, about 20 lap fresher tires. But really great run from that one car, was consistently in the top 10 the entire day as well, showed really good speed. That one car is maybe one of the most impressive cars for me so far this season. Really well done for Kurt Busch. Man, I would love to see him in championship contention this season. That would just be awesome to see for Kurt Busch. But congrats on a top 10 there. Really great recovery drive there to salvage something from an already solid day. Alex Bowman in 9th, kind of quiet day, just mediocre to an extent, if you want to call it that. The third best Hendrick car. Chase Elliott had a bit of an up and down day as well. But Bowman started at the rear for unimproved adjustments as well to start this race. So he had to come from the back to the front. He got up there relatively quickly, got inside the top 10 for stage 1, but then kind of just mellowed out in that kind of 8th to 13th range, I felt like, for the majority of the race from there on. But 9th place, not too bad for Alex Bowman. He'll take it.
Quiet day. They were definitely 4th for Hendrick in terms of just like raw pace, because Elliott had the extreme short run and then kind of fell off as the long run went along. Bowman was just kind of in between there, gets a solid finish, gets a nice point stay with a couple stage points mixed in there.
He goes to Vegas where he's very good too.
And exactly where Hendrick looked strong at points last year as well. So definitely not like the flashy performance for Bowman here, but you'll take the points and move on with things with an unspectacular top 10.
I don't know how Kyle Busch got a top 10, but he got a top 10. Gets 10th place there for the Candyman. What a terrible race for him. I benched him. I put him in my garage after stage 2. I'm not wasting a Kyle Busch usage on that one. It just surprises me after how much he hated that car that he finished inside the top 10. It was really bad for Kyle Busch in this one. Didn't really progress through the field, was just average, below average the entire race, was back in the mid-teens to late teens the entire race. And then somehow at the end they made an adjustment, pulled a quick strategy call there at the end of stage 2 to put him on 1 lap fresher tires. And then he made his way up through the pack to about that 12th spot. And then a couple of guys like Keselowski, he pitted, and a couple of other things worked his way. He gets a top 10 finish at the end of the day. So he'll take it, but definitely not a great start to the season for the 18 car. But hopefully he'll turn it around here at Vegas this upcoming weekend, going back home for the Busch brothers this upcoming weekend as well. Denny Hamlin in 11th just misses out on a top 10 finish. I don't know, man. I don't know what to think of this 11 car. Ran really well in the first 2 races, but this one, where we expected them to run a little bit better, especially at Homestead, just left a lot to be happy. Yeah, that's not even remotely close for me there. But 11th for the 11th car there. I don't know what I'm going to have to save some Hamlin usages from here on out. Just I can't use them all too heavily in the first couple of races here. So that's just a quick tidbit for fantasy there. But Austin Dillon, I think, is a pretty good storyline there as well. Finishing 12th, finishing in a top 10 position here last year, finishing 12th this year.
For the first 2 stages, they were the number 1 RCR car and flipped obviously as it went along, but still a very solid finish for RCR here in that number 3 team. And again, just pick up those solid finishes, start the season, build up that momentum as you go along, and very, very solid top 15 finish here for that team.
Yeah, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. right there behind him in 13th position. Looked pretty strong in the first stage when the sun was out. It fell off pretty quickly there once it kind of went to dusk, but recovered to a top 15 run for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at the end of the day. That's definitely a lot better than what we saw from them last season as the season progressed. So they'll take that. Hopefully it's an improvement for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. this season in a contract year as well. We'll see what he does with that, these kind of results here. Finishing ahead of the defending champion and Chase Elliott there in 14th as well. Like you said, that had that great short run speed, then really fell off on the long run, just burned the right rear tire, I think, off of it, is what I've heard from the tweets and the radio and stuff. But just didn't quite have the longevity. Like I said earlier, just a key word here, the entire race didn't have that long run speed that you would usually get in practice, where you can try to build that into the race car. It's very difficult to do from the sim. So Chase Elliott, disappointing day to say the least for the a guy that finished second here last year as well. So I think a big one here, a big kudos to the 15th place car, Daniel Suarez in Trackhouse equipment here. This is the first true test of what the speed is going to look like for that team. And to get a top 15 run, I think they'll absolutely take that.
Solid.
Very, very good.
Beat 23.11 again.
Yeah, and I told you, man, I think that there's something to it, but I do have the 2311 car making the playoffs, so I don't know what I'm thinking. Great run for Daniel Suarez here. A track that he has had success at in the past, winning a race here to win the championship. I had him as a stay away from. Still a decent call there. Finishing 15th was nothing to write home about in terms of getting you points. But for that team, confidence, that should bode well here for the rest of the season, hopefully for them. And, that's an RCR affiliated car. The entire organization finishing all in the top 15 there. That's very good. Very good for them. Brad Keselowski off of that weird strategy that we talked about, finishing 16th there. I don't want to spend any more time on that. Nope. We just dissected that enough. Chase Briscoe there in 18th. He went down 2 laps, I think, early on, but then he kind of slowly but surely found his groove, trying to get used to this Cup Series car on
Decent
Homestead.
Enough recovery, yeah.
I'll take it for him, for Chase Briscoe. Won a race here in the Xfinity Series last season, of course. Had a great run there where throttle and driver skill comes in a little bit more into play. But this package just didn't quite get to grips with it. It's understandable. It's first mile and a half really for SHR on the Cup Series. So I think they'll take a top 20 finish after the slow start. Chris Buescher ends up 19th after winning the first stage and getting solid stage 2 points. Just kind of flipped a switch there in a negative light there for Buescher as the race went on. The 6 car got stronger, the 17 car got worse, and like you said, got shuffled back on a restart, and then once that thing got back in traffic, it never quite performed the same. Christopher Bell in 20th. Disappointing for Adam Stevens.
Were there the entire day.
A guy that has set up championship winning cars in the past at this racetrack. Didn't quite bring the right equipment here for Christopher Bell on this occasion. Was running the wall consistently, but just didn't quite find the groove for that car. And like you said, was back in the 20s, mid-20s at some points in time. Like, it was just kind of an awful day for Christopher Bell. But at least he doesn't have to worry because he's already locked into the playoffs. So it doesn't
Maybe they're trying something different or something like that. And maybe they had that wall riding set up and just didn't come to them the same way that it did for Reddick there. But definitely a disappointing showing for Bell after winning, obviously, the previous week at the Daytona Road Course, coming into a track that he had success at in his rookie season last year with Levine Family Racing, and just didn't really materialize to anything here. So bit unfortunate to not see them carry that momentum here, especially with a good starting position. They fell back pretty quickly as well, but see what they're able to do here at coming up at Vegas, where we would expect those big teams like JGR and them to really kind of dominate the show.
He had some pretty incredible saves there last season for the Vine family.
That's right.
But hopefully he keeps it pointed in the right direction when they come back to Vegas here this time. Bubba Wallace, I don't know what happened in this race for him. Just kind of back in the mid-20s the entire race. Didn't show any glimpses of speed for that team. Disappointing. You wonder if that comes down to a little bit of JGR because they struggled as a whole.
I think it's a mixture of new team and JGR as a whole kind of missing, except for Truex. Just didn't really play out for them. And when we saw the new team with Trackhouse, RCR performed better, and we saw them get that last top 15 position. So, again, early days for a new team. Need to keep those expectations in check. Nothing to worry about at this point. We expect a new team to kind of take a couple of races to find their footing here. It'll first mile and a half
until they get back in, until they get the swing of things, as we've seen.
Exactly.
It's going to take some time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Right now, it's just kind of trying to maximize the points to keep yourself in the game, and they've kind of done that to a certain extent. They've got some decent point totals. They're still like 16th, 17th in total points right now. So doing enough to just kind of get points when you can here to this point of the season. But as each race goes along, the expectations start to creep higher and higher, and we'll see what they're. I think the big thing will to see what 2311 is like when JGR is kind of on the top of their game, and they've got 3 cars in the top 10 or all 4 in the top 10. When we see those kind of JGR performances, I think that's when we're going to see truly where 2311 is at.
Yeah, I agree. Just disappointing here for the first mile and a half, but we'll see what happens at Vegas this upcoming weekend. Cole Custer was running in the top 5 there late in the race.
Thank God we could talk about what stupid, dumb, bad luck for me. So I took the risk with Cole Custer going on his 3 really good Homestead races in Xfinity. Didn't do well here last year, but he talked about some of the jitters that he had early last season and in the Cup Series and adjusting to things. Was quiet through the first couple stages, but then is up there contending for a top 5 at one point, running 7th. Looks like I got fantasy in the bag and has a tire start going down with 2 to go, finishes as one of the last cars on the lead lap, and I lose fantasy by literally 1 point. If he had finished 2 positions better, I still would have won. But alas, the racing gods said no to Kyle going 3 for 3 to start the season and decided to hand you a fantasy win by 1 point.
So about in the stage 2 area of the race, I'm just pulling up the old text here. Okay. So I benched Kyle in the garage. So we're into stage 3 here now. I put Kyle Busch in the garage. I kept Tyler Reddick in just based off of the longevity and his ability to run the wall. So I saved a Kyle Busch usage there, and he garaged Christopher Bell, hence his poor performance. The entire race didn't really show anything, so it made sense for him. And Cole Custer was running well at that point. So so I said, literally the only reason I kept Kyle in, this is Kyle Cushman, of course, and I said, I've listened to the radio. It just seemed like too many issues for it to be fixed in one stage. Just a better bet than Bell at this point. Just still keeps me in the hunt. Yeah, you had more of a clear option, a clear-cut option. Again, that's me. I'm just a mishmash of mediocre. Not to alarm you, but I'm currently leading by 3 points. Flashback to the past 2 weekends in fantasy. I've lost by 3 points, so I did not need to hear that at that point in time. And then here comes the bomb. Man, Custer is doing fantastic job right now. Would be a shame if anything happened to him. And once again, the Wacker jinx pays off. They left it late, very late, but it does come back.
You said that as the stage 3 was starting, so it took a while for the jinx to come into play. But
they left it late, but yet again, it did work. My stay away from strategy and all this voodoo works again. I don't understand it. I think I have a grasp on this sport, and then it just absolutely smacks me across the chin.
We'll get to your other jinx as well in a little bit here with the Xfinity race. That one was especially scary, but
but nonetheless, Cole Custer 23rd. But overall, Custer must feel exceptionally well from that entire race. Put together a solid race. It is what it is at the end of the day. He can't do anything about it. A tire comes undone. You can't do anything about that. So I do feel bad for you, honestly.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's brutal. I would be absolutely livid if I were you. So
I was feeling so good about getting that Custer pick right. And
you did. You outsmarted me there for 265 of the 267 laps.
Evidently.
Unfortunately, it did not come down to 265 laps. Those extra 2 cost you in the end. And thank God that happened, because if I went down 3-0, I would be in a deep hole to try and dig out of. But now we salvaged something, had to use up a couple heavy hitters for it at the end of the day, so that may come back to bite me. I'll still take the win at the end of the day. I
did too, as well, to be fair. I
kind of matched you on the big hitters. That's the problem. But at the end, I used the Harvick and a Blaney usage. That's going to hurt me a little bit down the line. That Blaney one's going to really hurt. But Cole Custer, 23rd. Joey Logano there in 25th. We've already talked about him. Matt DiBenedetto, we briefly touched on him. 28th position here. Really bad start to the season for Matt DiBenedetto. In points, he is...
Where is he here? James Davison and guys,
he is
right?
34th in points behind James Davison and Josh Bilicki.
Yep.
That's not a great start. And that's a massive hole for him now to dig out of if he does not win a race this season. On points alone, that's going to be very tough to consistently make that up. I don't know what to expect from Matt DiBenedetto now,
and
because
the starting possession isn't going to help out either, because they're going to be at the back with that as well.
Huge with the formula. Huge with the formula. Yeah. He needs to right the ship fast. Las Vegas, a track he finished second at both times last season. So
with some luck, to be fair, but
at the end of the day, it's still putting himself in the right position at the right time. Yep. They have to hope for something similar to that to get their season righted here, because they cannot consistently finish outside the top 20, or the playoffs are going to be over and done with pointing
especially
their way
with
in.
Some of the overperformers we've seen to this point. Like it's already a significant hole. So
Michael McDowell takes up a huge spot there for someone like Matt DiBenedetto. I mean, I don't know if I put money on Matt DiBenedetto right now to make the playoffs.
If he doesn't right now,
right? Not to make I don't really know, but definitely one to keep your eye on the negative side of things for a storyline to start the season. There's a couple of names, and this next one here as well, Ryan Blaney here in 29th.
Yeah.
Just a terrible start for him to this season. I have him making the championship 4. I think this is going to be a breakout year for Ryan Blaney. Still waiting to hopefully capture that, but I imagine that 12 car will get it going here. Traditionally not his 3 best racetracks to start.
That first Vegas race last year, so maybe they can try and rekindle some of that, but yeah, it's a lot of unlucky parts this early part of the season, but even when they've been a clean car, they haven't shown the kind of speed that we expect from them.
No, and that could be a worrying sign over there for Team Penske if they cannot get their long run stuff get together. That's not the trend you would definitely want to be going for. And then lastly, Eric Almirola finishing right there behind him in 30th after those two got together. So that's the notable finishers.
Rough start for Almirola in terms of points as well.
Yeah, that's the notable finishers from the NASCAR Cup Series race at Homestead. Any final thoughts on that race, particularly, Kyle, before we get into Cush's threes?
Are we going to rate this one?
We can. Would you like to rate it? I would love to rate it.
Sure. I'll go ahead and
we got to do it every week. We got to do it every week.
Why not? I think this is about as good of a 550 horsepower, 1.5 mile race without like a late race caution to spice things up or anything like that. Just a normal, good race. This is about as good as it's going to get for a 550 horsepower 1.5 miles. So for me, I'm just going to give it a straight up. I was debating between an 8.5 or something, but I'm going to go maybe a bit high on it, but a 9 out of 10. This was like about as good of a 1.5 miles as you can get. It was really refreshing to have that long green flag run at the end here without kind of cautions to screw with the strategy and the comers and goers and all that kind of stuff. It was cool to see William Byron up front as well. It was a great battle for second as well. We got some fun names up there inside the top 10 as well. Really, really fun race here at the best 1.5 miles in NASCAR. Solid 9 out of 10 for me.
I'll give it an 8.5. I can't quite give it a 9.
I was wrestling between the 8.5 and 9. I decided to go with a 9 at the end of it, but yeah.
Yeah, I just, it's not quite in that one marker off of a perfect race. It's just that little bit further behind. Homestead-Miami Speedway, what a great racetrack in itself. It is perfect. Tire aging. It's got multiple grooves. Driver talent and driver ability comes out at the forefront for this race, and it's definitely a fun one for sure. So I'll give it an 8.5, just a little bit kind of all over the place. I just felt like if there's a little bit more strategy involved, I think that would have been nice, but it was kind of clear cut the entire way, but you expect that with That's 4 fair. Tires every pit stop. But nonetheless, had some comers and goers, had some surprise finishers, had surprise leaders, namely Chris Buescher early on, had a lot of great storylines throughout this event, and I couldn't be happy with how it all kind of played out there. So the 1.5 miles, so I'm looking at you for the remainder of the season. That's your benchmark. Try and go out there and beat it. It's going to be damn tough. damn tough. But Cush's threes, Kyle, take it away.
All right, let's do it. We're going to start on the happy side of things, as per usual, and we already talked about him a decent amount here. Michael McDowell was the first one. Like, come on. How is it not? To finish 6th in that 34 front row motorsports car at a track like Homestead, where it's not like a road course. It's not like a super speedway where you usually get to see a mixed up kind of top 10. It really is. A lot of the top end teams usually dominate the top 10, top 15. And to see Michael McDowell not only finish well inside the top 10, but to almost crack the top 5 and almost beat Kevin Harvick on speed as the top forward. Unreal start to the season for them. We talked about him quite a bit, deservedly so. first one for me. I mentioned before we started that I had like 1.5 for the Cup Series for Cush's threes on the positive side. And that's because Tyler Reddick kind of counts as both here, because second obviously got taken away at the end of the day, but that doesn't take the performance away. We don't really know exactly like what that car is, because it's an RSS car, but then it's also Our Motorsports. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a weird like mishmash of everything there. But at the end of the day, he took the number 23 unsponsored car there and took it from basically a back row start, took it to the front, and ended up finishing second. Got it taken away because of a failing tech afterwards, but that doesn't take away from the performance itself. Masterclass from Tyler Reddick, as we would expect at Homestead. Did so in Xfinity, did so in Cup. Fantastic weekend for him, just solidifying the fact that 100%. He's probably the best wheelman in NASCAR at this track. Finally here, we're going to a full-time Xfinity Series driver, and we'll talk about that race here in a second. I'm looking at Jeremy Clements.
Yay,
First time in 15 races for him at this track to finish inside the top 10, and he did so running there for much of this day. He was in that kind of like 9th through 12th kind of range for this entire race. And for that team to go up there and finish inside the top 10 is huge for them. Obviously, last year they kind of struggled out of the gate. They missed the playoffs. This year, a much better start on points here. And a great run here at Homestead. His first top 10 at this track in 15 starts in the Xfinity Series. Jeremy Clements with a very well-deserved shout-out in Cush's threes to the disappointments from this weekend. And I'll start with the Cup Series as well. I'll get this one out of the way because we've already talked about it quite a bit, but I just said Penske as a whole for that weird pit decision, for the fact that they fell off at the end. I just decided to just kind of encapsulate them as a whole rather than picking one of Keselowski or Logano, because it was both the same strategy.
Your manufacturer pick.
Yeah.
Large reasoning behind it was Penske.
Yeah. If I were to pick one of them, it would be Logano, because he kind of fell off more than Keselowski did in terms of raw pace. Yeah. The other one I'm looking at from the Cup Series is Christopher Bell. As we mentioned, won last week, obviously at the road course. Coming into this one, a very good starting position, a track that he's been good at in the past. Finished 8th here with Levine Family Racing early on last season, and they just kind of missed the mark entirely. They dropped back significantly very early on, got no stage points, were running 20th through 25th for much of this race, and barely finished inside the top 20. Very disappointing showing for that number 20 team, when we kind of expected them to carry that momentum from the win at the road course into a good finish here. Didn't end up being the case. And finally, going back to Xfinity, because of course we didn't have any trucks or anything like that this past weekend, I'm looking at the 98 and Riley Herbst. Last year at Homestead, they were fantastic at this track with Chase Briscoe. They came back from multiple laps down in the first of the doubleheader to almost go out and win the race with some late cautions and everything coming into play there. A fantastic comeback effort in that first race. The second one, they won with a little bit of caution help as well. They showed so much speed last year, and the 98 just wasn't a factor at all in this race. They finished outside the top 10. They weren't that good at all. They were just relative to what I would expect from the 98 at this track, where they essentially were one of the top 2, top 3 teams last year. So they mentioned it on the broadcast a little bit, where they thought that Herbst would be up in the conversation a little bit more. I just didn't see it from them, and they were the big disappointment for me out of the Xfinity race.
I think you're being super harsh on Herbst, because he got wrecked. He got wrecked by Allgaier. What do you want from the guy? He finished 11th. He recovered. He was laps down.
Even before that, though, they weren't in the conversation.
I'd still take an 11th place finish if I'm Riley Herbst after.
Okay, so who would you look at from the Xfinity race as being the big disappointment then? For me, it was the 98 just not being in the conversation whatsoever.
Okay, well, let me just pull up the Xfinity Series results, because I did not have that loaded up.
But that's completely understandable. But for me, I'm looking at the 98, and I expect, based off of last season, the only thing that's changed there is Riley Herbst. They've got the exact same crew and everything there. Only thing that changed was Herbst. Last year, they were one of the top teams to beat. This year, they weren't really in the conversation.
I mean, is it harsh to say Justin Allgaier after what happened in that race? I mean, he was nowhere speed-wise before that either. Like, I would argue that Allgaier had...
But the 98 was one of the teams to beat last year, whereas the 7 wasn't.
This is his first mile-and-a-half track for them. I can understand a little bit of coming to grips with it. I understand.
He's not a rookie. He was with JGR last year. I think you're cutting him a lot of slack.
I think it's a little harsh, but I respect your opinion as always, Kyle. I
Hey,
appreciate
it's
it.
fine to disagree, but I was definitely disappointed by Herbst's out of this one.
Man, I thought a recovery drive, I can understand it if he finished back in the 20s, but finishing 11th at the end of the day ahead of AJ Allmendinger after this one, I know he spun after that race restart there, but 11th is not too bad. I know he won the race last season, but I mean, that's
That
Chase
should have been
Briscoe
a
we're
top
talking
5
about.
team.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. But let's not waste any time. Let's get right into the Xfinity Series race because, oh my God, what a race this was. More chaotic to say the least than the Cup Series.
Slightly.
I don't know. Where do you want to start with this? Do you want to start with the race winner? I don't know.
I don't
Do you
know
want to
what
start with the three laps to go? I don't know.
I think we got to talk about the big incident.
Okay. Noah Gragson. Man, that is heartbreaking how it all ended up for him. He should have 3 consecutive wins here at Homestead-Miami Speedway in the Xfinity Series. He leaves with no trophies at the end of the day, and this time he leaves with a wrecked race car. Wow. I was stunned. The jinx.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck. I could never have predicted that, but like I would never wish that upon
You just
anybody.
need to stop talking about any drivers whatsoever.
I'm just going to keep everything internal from now on. There's no point in even me texting you any positive signs about any driver from here on out. But yeah, Noah Gragson cruising along to the victory there with 3 laps to go. And what do you know? A Whataburger car comes right up in front of him. David Starr, and just not to slack David Starr here whatsoever, on the lead lap, running very well at that point in time. Cuts a right front tire right in front of Noah Gragson, slides up right into nowhere to go. It's just a freak accident. Noah Gragson gets taken out at the end of the day. He had some choice words, to say the least, after the race. Understandably frustrated after losing yet another one here at Homestead-Miami Speedway. But this was a little bit of a different case here, I'd argue, with David Starr actually having a pretty solid run going here. At the end of the day, it's just heartbreak for Noah Gragson. A rough start as a whole for Junior Motorsports to start this season. This is Gregson's playhouse, it seems, right now in the Xfinity Series, able to run the wall like nobody's business right now. In that series particularly, it's just unfortunate for that team. I have no other words to say for Noah Gragson to console him after this. This is just a heartbreaking loss for that 9 team, and at the end of the day, it presented an opportunity for some other guys to capitalize, but Noah Gragson off to a pretty poor start to the season after a very unfortunate ending to this one.
To quote you from just before the wreck itself, he was doing a great job, and just
oh no, did I say that?
Yeah, like literally like a lap or 2 before the wreck. But yeah, it was just so.
No, I did. Oh my God.
But yeah, it was just
that's bad.
So heartbreaking to see, because it was at the track last year that he should have won twice, and he didn't get anything from there. And you thought he was going to get the redemption arc this year, and somebody in front of him has a tire go down, runs up into the wall, and he has nowhere to go. And you can do the talk of, oh, well, he has an 8-second lead and he should have backed off and should have just tried to pass on the front stretch, or just stayed behind him and don't even like play with that fire or anything like that. But what are the odds that the guy in front of you is going to have a tire go down with 3 to go and wreck your race car? Like it's disappointing to see him kind of double down with, like, obviously you can understand him right immediately afterwards be frustrated with things, but to after the fact double down and try and act like David Starr got tight or something and ran into him or was trying to run him to her, that's not the case at all. David Starr is a veteran. He knows what he's doing in these cars. It wasn't something that he intentionally did, but just such bad luck. And you got to feel for Gragson in this situation here, even if you don't like him. Such an unfortunate way to, like, that's the worst possible way to lose a race, right? Like, yeah. And obviously open the door for a chaotic kind of finish there. Open the door for Myatt Snyder to come through and grab his first ever National Series win, which was great to see for him. He had a good run here in that RSS 93 last year, and goes out in that number 2 RCR car and goes out and gets the victory. So congrats to him, but it should be the number 9 in victory lane here probably 3 times in a row. And he's going to have a chance here, Noah Gragson, to go out and try and redeem himself once again here at Vegas back over back there. Home. But just, yeah. How about that unfortunate luck? Home track as well coming up at Vegas for him there. So hopefully he can go get some redemption, but feel so bad for them and feel bad for David Starr too, because he doesn't want to be in that situation. He's going out there performing very well at that time, was inside the top 15 for MBM in that number 13 underfunded team, has a big sponsor on board in Whataburger, and just that's the way that things come to a close for them. Super unfortunate there for everybody involved.
Yeah, I had about 3 different jinxes in this one, to say the least.
You had a lot going on.
Started on the previous episode where I picked Harrison Burton to win. Guess where he finished? Second to last after it all. Right. After Reddick's disqualification. That was a rough one. And then I have Moffitt. Look at him go in that final stage.
Oh yeah, and then he hits the wall.
Oh yeah, then he goes and hits the wall and cuts a tire.
I completely forgot about that.
Oh, I didn't. And then Gregson, of course, doing a great job.
Hope he doesn't run out of timestamps on those. Like it's literally like right after.
Hope he doesn't run out of fuel at 3:52, so 6:52 the race time, and then at 3:54. No effing way. Checkers or wreckers, as Noah Gragson said prior to the race.
That's an ominous one now, eh?
That's terrible. He jinxed himself. I'm not putting that on me. He jinxed himself. Okay. It's bad. It's really bad.
He's got a bad track record right here.
Homestead was not kind to me when I texted about drivers. But yeah, I mean, the text basically summed the entire race. Chaotic, lots of heartbreak for a lot of guys at the end of the day. Of course, Noah Gragson, the most prominent one on how it all ended up. But at the end of the day, Mike Snyder comes home victorious, and a double overtime victory there over Tyler Reddick. A very incredible win for Mike Snyder. Was in contention the entire race, up in the top 5 it seemed. Kept it clean for the most part, had a couple of scrapes on the right-hand side of the car, but you expected at Homestead. Yeah, exactly. And Mike Snyder gets his first career national NASCAR victory, which is huge for somebody like him, and punches his ticket to the playoffs. We were thinking maybe he would be a fringe playoff guy making it in off points. Nope, he goes out there and wins a race. And just like the Cup Series, what a weird start to the Xfinity Series as well. Austin Cindric, you understand that. But there was a pretty big win for Penske, of course. Ty Gibbs at the Daytona Road Course. Yeah. Exactly. And now Mike Snyder here with a great victory there. And as we have alluded to before, Tyler Reddick finishing second on the track, fails post-race inspection and ends up finishing last for his efforts. So unfortunate there, but at least he didn't actually win the race, and there was this whole debacle, and Mike Snyder couldn't celebrate his first career victory. You would hate to see something like that. But
and Reddick, it looks like, is going to be running a handful of races here. He's on the running order here to run Vegas as well in that 23. So looks like Tyler Reddick here is going to be running a decent amount of, or at least a handful here to start the season of Xfinity races, which is something I wasn't expecting to see, but it's pretty cool.
Cup guys running Xfinity Series races makes it entertaining. What? Oh my God!
There's a slight difference for running for Joe Gibbs Racing as a Cup Series driver and running for Our Motorsports.
Yeah, potato, my guy. Come on, let's look past all that nonsense of equipment. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. But yeah, what a great race this was. Besides Noah Gregson's heartbreak there, Brett Moffitt, as we mentioned there, was having a spectacular run. Man, I wanted to see him win a race so bad in this series, man. I just wanted to happen so bad. He had a great tire strategy, as you alluded to. He was just on the mark the entire day, running the wall consistently. And he didn't have that preliminary race to kind of get him set up for it, like the Truck Series race. He had to go in there kind of in the dark to an extent with this car at Homestead, and he passed with flying colors, was right there at the end, leading laps with about 30 to go before Gregson eventually got past him, but was right there within about 7 to 8 tenths to 1 second at the end of this race before he got into the wall and ultimately took him out of contention for the win. But with that late race caution for Gregson, he ended up salvaging a top 10 run at the end of the day. So very impressive run from Brett Moffitt, Kyle. I don't know what other word to describe it. He was just kind of in his own time zone to an extent for what we expect out of that car for Our Motorsports, the O2. He's off to a phenomenal start down there in the Xfinity Series.
Yeah, no, they've been taking advantage of that early, really good run at the Super Speedway at Daytona, getting that really good starting position, and they've maintained it through these first few races. And obviously hitting the wall and having to pit, unfortunate there, because you would have thought they would have been a contender to win there at the end. But very strong start for that entire team, obviously running they were planning to run the 03 because of the rained out qualifying and stuff. They're essentially running that car as the 23 for RSS here with Tyler Reddick in it at least. And a great start for that team here in their second season in Xfinity. And as I mentioned, taking advantage of that starting position. They're staying at the front. They're keeping things clean. And that's resulting in some good runs here. So hopefully they can keep it up here at Vegas coming up and maintain this nice little start to the season here.
For sure. It was very impressive for Brett Moffitt to start this season in the Xfinity Series. So wishing him all the best as he continues his run for the Oh, no, he can't run for the championship because he's not running for points. Never going to let that one go the entire season, no matter how bad it gets.
Well, you see, no, I'm not going to bite. I'm not going to bite.
Okay, he's not biting. I tried to bait him, but
you got me, but no, I'm not.
I'm going to reel it back in with this one. But yeah, very, very great race from start to finish. Had a scary moment early on in stage one with tire carrier Josh Shiplett, for the 18 team there over the wall crew. Normally Denny Hamlin's pit crew. He got run over by Daniel Hemrick as he kind of missed his pit stall, and slid through it. So he was luckily okay. Went to the infield care center, was able to perform his regular action on the Cup Series race on Sunday. So happy that Josh Shiplett is doing well after that very scary looking incident. You never want to see something like that, especially when he's carrying the tire. A lot of things can happen in a short amount of time. So happy to see that he is doing well. A.J. Allmendinger won a stage in this one as well, showing that Atlanta speed was maybe no fluke last season when he won a race with these kind of worn out tracks. Unfortunately for him, that was the result of that last caution of the day on that overtime. Was in the top 10 at that point. NASCAR threw the caution after he had saved the spin. A bit of a questionable caution there, to say the least. But at the end of the day, Myatt Snider did end up winning the race. Who was leading on that restart. So no harm, no foul at the end of the day. But yeah, Allmendinger had a pretty solid race. Ends up finishing 14th, which is not where he should have finished in this one.
Save though.
But
man, that was nuts.
Guy's a wheel man. Gets some redemption for that stage one kind of clash with Austin Cindric last week. At least gets a stage point here on maybe more unlikely, to say the least, track for him to get it rather than a road course. But a solid point stay for A.J. Allmendinger at the end of the day here. Harrison Burton, like I mentioned, my winner pick, had an engine go bad. It seemed just lost power under caution.
Randomly, too. Yeah, under caution of all times.
Yeah, and his teammate there in Ty Dillon, not off to a great start here with the Joe Gibbs Xfinity program, as he had a radiator issue, I believe it was. So both of those guys, you would think, would be up there in the top 10 contending for a solid finishing position, end up having DNFs here for the Homestead race. So not a great start there for JGR for those two guys here for Homestead. The Allgaier Riley Herbst incident was interesting to mention, because Herbst, as you mentioned earlier, didn't have the greatest result, the greatest performance for that 98 car, which we expect more out of for sure.
Yeah, to be fair, no, both of them were disappointing in terms of versus what we would expect for both of those teams. They weren't running where we thought they would be, just kind of clash there in kind of the classic kind of incident that we see at Homestead, where somebody just kind of expects somebody else to back off of it, and they don't. They hold their ground, and both people kind of go down for it. So it's kind of that game of chicken we see all too often at tracks like this, where you run the high groove, somebody tries a slide job. When it works, it's great, it's fun to watch. When it doesn't work, usually doesn't end well for either guy.
Yeah, Ryan Blaney and Eric Almirola did their best to replicate that the next day. So, but yeah, that Noah Gragson thing, to go quickly back to that, reminded me with the cutting of the tire. I don't think you'll probably remember it, but 2013 at Bristol, Jeff Gordon.
That's a long. Okay,
yeah, Jeff Gordon is leading the race, and then he cuts the tire and turns 3 and 4, and Matt Kenseth is running the wall. Both of those guys, they were running 1 and 2 at the time. They were both out of the race at that one. Look it up on YouTube. You'll know what I mean exactly.
It's even a Gordon one. That's a little bit sad for me. But
2013.
Those were the lost years, is what I'll call them.
Oh man. Poor Jeffrey. But I don't really have anything else to add for the Xfinity Series race. We kind of discussed it all, but we can look at the notable finishers from this one, because there were quite a few.
Sure.
With where everybody finished. Obviously, Myatt Snider, congratulations to him on the victory, punching his ticket to the playoffs this season. That's really impressive from him. RCR as well, bringing that Xfinity Series program back this season. Yep. That's a big vote of confidence for a former championship winning team there with Tyler Reddick. So props to him. Brandon Jones in second had a very good run here for Joe Gibbs Racing. Brandon Jones, man, he could be a sneaky little guy this season.
He's always quiet, but it seems like he either has a quiet day and he's there in like the top 3, top 5 by the end of things, or he gets caught up in somebody else's mess. Yeah,
he's a top 5 guy or kind of bust to an extent for Brandon Jones, it feels like. But putting himself in the right position, gets a second place finish, cross the line third. But of course, with Reddick's disqualification, everybody bumps up a spot here. Daniel Hemrick recovers from a bunch of different issues throughout the entire race, gets to third. Very impressive showing from him here. Still hasn't quite broken through for that win yet, but a top 5 finish here, off to a pretty solid start to his campaign.
Finished I would say that's pretty good with Junior Motorsports in that playoff race as well. So a track that he performed at well last year, maybe they can take that good starting position and turn it into something.
Yeah, for sure. Jeb Burton there, very impressive start for him this season, finishing in the top 5 here.
Quiet, but just taking advantage of other people's mistakes.
Yeah, this is the old 10 car for Ross Chastain last season, so this is pretty good for Jeb Burton to be finishing in the top 5 here at Homestead. Brett Moffitt back there in 7th. You have the likes of Haley and Cindric there in 5th and 6th, but you expect them. But Brett Moffitt recovers to get a 7th place finish after that cut tire at the end of things, so that caution really saved him to get a result at the end of it. Very impressive showing. We've talked about him. Ryan Sieg in kind of their first real big performance here with the new manufacturer with Ford, ends up finishing 8th. Was not really the performance I was expecting out of the 39 car. Was hoping for a little bit more speed, but we saw him win stages last season here at Homestead, obviously on an offset tire strategy, but nonetheless finishing in the top 10 here. Hopefully that will go a long way for their season. I would love to see Ryan Sieg just continually do this each week. But another guy you had in Cush's 3s here, Jeremy Clements, getting 9th place here. We've spent some time talking about him already. Josh Berry as well. Props to him. This entire weekend was very,
very good. Such a different
track
than he's used to.
Yeah, finishing 10th, a top 10 run for Josh Berry. He went, he had an unscheduled pit stop there. He had to recover and ends up getting back on the lead lap. I mean, that's very, very good for Josh Berry. Looking for, I don't know if he's running Vegas this weekend, is he? I'm not 100% sure.
He's basically running the entire first half uninterrupted. The only one would be, we still don't have confirmation as to where Dale Jr. is going to run this year. So at some point we're going to see his name pop up on the list, but until that happens and until Sam Mayer turns 18, it's all Josh Berry here for the number 8.
Riley Herbst 11th. We talked about him. JJ Yeley in 12th. What a great run for him. That's very impressive on a 1.5-mile track.
Number
Yeley's
17,
had a couple of runs.
Ware.
Yeah. Alex LeBay, the Canadian, 15th place there. Very solid run for him as well. Was in the top 15, top 20-ish the entire day. So that's as much as you can expect from that kind of team on a 1.5-mile track. Timmy Hill, I love this guy. Finishing 16th, always makes an appearance, I feel like, on the notable finishes. Very impressive run for him. Dexter Bean in 17th place. And then this guy in 20th, Jay Buford, his first ever race on a 1.5 mile. NASCAR was keeping a special eye on him the entire race to see if he's fit to run the rest of the season on these kinds of tracks. Well, I think a top 20 finish at the end of the day will hopefully go a long ways in making NASCAR's decision a little bit easier here. But impressive run for Jay Buford here. Dexter Bean and Timmy Hill.
Yeah, no, for Jade Buford there was a point where the leader, I think it was Gregson, probably Gregson, because he was staying on the high side the entire time.
Bad.
He was getting mad.
So bad.
But you know what? For Buford, it's just getting the experience right here. He's a guy who comes from a road racing background. He's running the full season here with that new 48 team. It's just about getting experience. And obviously starting off at a 1.5 mile like Homestead, it's one of the more difficult ones for him to start with. But kept things clean, made things a little bit frustrating for the leader at a time, but at least he didn't blow a tire in front of him. And you know what? It's take that positive momentum. Other people made some mistakes, got some positions there at the end, and just carry that along for the rest of the season. Their big thing is just going to be taking advantage of the road courses when they get them. There's a handful of those. He performed well in a couple starts last year, gets a full-time ride, and just gaining experience race over race at the 1.5 miles.
Yeah. David Starr finishing 21st, not where he deserved to be. Was about
they were
the
12th, like what, 12th, 13th at the
12th,
time.
13th,
so
right? Yeah.
Come on, great run for that MBM car. Unfortunate again.
Nothing you can do.
The way that it finished off, but good to see that kind of team have a decently sized sponsor there in Whataburger there. Nice looking car. Yeah. It's just unfortunate the way that we had to see it on TV.
Yeah, they had some bright moments on the broadcast. Then, of course, they cut to that, and then
they were like one of the top underfunded performers there for a little bit, and just we all know what happened.
Yeah. Santina Ferrucci here was kind of mentioned
Deserves
off the
a shout
top.
out.
Deserves a shout out here, finishing 30th in his first ever NASCAR Xfinity Series race for Sam Hunt Racing in the 26 car. At the end of the
He
day,
had some legit speed.
he was decent. He got in the wall too much, but you kind of expect that for a guy being a little eager here, over aggressive for his first race. But I'll give it to him. You know, a solid effort at the end of the day. I'm not sure how many laps down he finished. I think it was like 3 or 4, if I'm not mistaken. How many was it?
20th
Only 2 laps.
lap.
2 laps. So that's not too bad.
20th fastest lap, first ever race in a stock car here at a difficult 1.5 in Homestead. Completely different to anything that he's run before. Very, very solid showing for Ferrucci here in his debut.
For sure. Had to give him a special shout out there because it was a good storyline coming into this one. Hopefully he can continue to progress as the season goes along. A top 15 finish here or there would be absolutely incredible.
If he's in the car coming up at Vegas here again. I would assume he would, but I could be wrong.
He is in the race this weekend at Vegas. So we'll see if he can improve on that effort here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He'll give it his best shot for sure. Hopefully he can improve on this 30th place run. And then a couple of disappointing ones here. Ty Dillon 37th, Justin Allgaier 38th, Harrison Burton 39th, and of course Tyler Reddick finishing last after the disqualification. So those are your notable finishers from the NASCAR Xfinity Series race. We got to give this one a grade here too, Kyle, because it is on the second race that we only talk about this weekend. Man. This is a tough one because it depends on how you want to look at the racing.
I went first on the last one. You go first on this one. I want to know where your head's at.
Okay. For me, this race is an 8.75. I'll give it the edge. I'll give it an edge on the Cup Series race. I can't put it quite level because I was a little bit more entertained by this one. I could give it a 9. I'll give it a 9. Screw it. I'll give it a 9.
Okay.
This race was really fun to watch. Lots of ups and downs, comers and goers. Allmendinger winning his stage, and then you didn't really see him at the front as much per se. There, Cindric was out front early on as well. Got off tire strategy there. That was the key element for me there. That's why I'll give it the extra 0.5. Had a little bit more tire strategy there that came into play on how the stages broke down. And then at the end of the thing, I mean, it's just chaos at the end. I mean, I feel so bad for Gragson, but it gave us an entertaining finish, a surprise winner, and very happy that Maya Snyder ended up in victory lane at the end of it.
I'll go an 8.5.
He gives it the other guy. Okay.
Yeah.
We split it equal this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Extremely entertaining race. The different strategy was a little bit interesting, but at the same time, we didn't really see it pay off in that final stage the same way, just because it was caution with like 10 to go in the stage. We knew the guys on tires would come through and win the stage. It would just be a matter of who. It was entertaining there. We just didn't see the payoff of like the different tire strategies and who had an extra set and stuff like that come at the end of the race. And the chaos.
The guy who had 2 got wrecked.
Yeah. The chaos at the end was fun, but it just felt like Gragson should have won the race, and it was just external circumstances. And just for that, I'll give it a slightly lower grade than the Cup Series one, just because the Cup Series one was nice. It was clean. It was fun. Didn't have the chaos of the Xfinity one. The chaos is fun at times, but we've had a lot of chaos to start here. So I'll go a little bit lower, 8.5. Still a fantastic race, though.
I'll give it the best of both worlds here. I think you get both different sides of the coin here in the Xfinity Series race and the Cup Series race. Got a long run for Cup, short sprint to the finish here with the Xfinity. Had a lot of different things in between that led up to that moment. So
I think if we didn't see double overtime, if we saw the one overtime, they don't throw the caution for the Allmendinger spin, I might bump it up to a 9. But the fact that we had 2 there and everything, but yeah.
It didn't affect the winner at the end of the day, which is nice. So
Reddick was up there out front.
He would have got disqualified anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, that's fair in that regard, I guess.
Right? Like, even if Reddick wins the race, he doesn't end up keeping it. I'd rather see Maya Snyder celebrate, do the burnout.
Absolutely. If the car is gonna fail tech, then yeah, I want the guy to actually get
especially his first win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's all the notes and everything from the recaps from the races this weekend. Any final thoughts before we wrap up the Homestead recap episode, Kyle?
Just a damn shame that this track is just kind of tucked in as the 3rd race of the season with no real importance to the season. It's not like a season opener Daytona 500, of course. That's not going to change. No. It's not significant in the way that a playoff race is or a championship race is. It's just kind of tucked in as a regular season race with no real extra importance, even though it's the best mile and a half product that you've got in the season. And it's unfortunate because we should have two of these a season. If we are going to have it as a random regular season race, we should at least have it as like a playoff race or something like that.
Oh my God.
Alas, there's only so much they can do with the schedule right now with the mile and a halves and stuff. You can mess around with all the road course and stuff right now. You're more locked in with the mile and a halves you got right now. But I think NASCAR going into the future has got to look into the possibility of either making a Homestead Data playoff race again, or adding a second one or something along those lines, because this is too good of a track to have it go to waste as a third race of the season and no real importance other than that.
I have a new episode idea, Kyle.
Uh-oh.
It is, we have to make our own dream Cup Series calendar.
Oh, God, that's going to be a tire fire.
Come on, that would be fun. We can put Homestead where we want. We solve all the problems here. That'll be maybe a little bit later on in this season.
3 Homestead dates and then the rest of the season in like Canada
Bristol.
or something, so we get to watch it.
You get Bristol, Homestead, the Daytona 500, and Montreal for the rest of it. That's basically all the calendar is. But I think that'd be a fun thing to do on maybe an off weekend for the Cup Series or something like that when it's a little bit more of a downtime. But right now, F1's heating up. It's going to start coming thick and fast here. Car releases, as we mentioned, off the top coming as you're watching this. Have already happened when you've watched this. So hopefully they're good-looking paint schemes. Obviously looking for the Alpine one because we've basically seen the Mercedes one.
Really interested to see what Alpine does.
The Mercedes one, I don't really like what I've seen so far. I don't know about you. I think you've probably seen the teaser stuff where it's just AMG all over the back. Like, I don't like that at all. But we'll leave our full opinions on it for the next episode of the Green Flag. Yeah, we'll need to see it in its full form. But that does it for today's episode, guys. That was a good one. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag Pod, as well as Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. All the links to the social channels will be in the description of the video. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman. Signing off for now. We will talk to you later this week to get you set up for the Las Vegas weekend.